Hello, Reed Rudden here with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. I wanted to make the sheep and goat community aware of a virus that pops up from time to time. It's not ultra common, so often people don't know about it. It's called the Cache Valley virus. Generally, we see problems more so in the sheep industry about this time of year. People will have some problems with lambs that are being deformed or really difficult births. And what happens is it's a result of this virus. But unfortunately, the virus caused the effect roughly 4 months earlier. And so what happens is this virus is transmitted by mosquitoes. It typically overwinters in mosquitoes and then infects animals, throughout the summer. And then animals that are bred generally in the months of August and maybe even September are exposed to these mosquitoes that carry the virus. They bite a ewe, and if that ewe is in the first month of gestation, that's when we typically see problems. So the first 50 days is kind of the time frame when there's issues with it. And even more specifically within that, if they're bitten in that day 25 to day 50 range, that virus infects the ewe, and it also passes through that maternal barrier between the ewe's blood and lamb's blood and infects the fetus, and it causes central nervous system defect. And so that lamb then, while it's growing, while it's small, it may only be this big, that central nervous system is affected and it grows into a deformity. And so the worst cases are something like this picture here, which is a lamb. You can see that the spine is twisted and turned. Normally the face will be deformed, and often the legs are displaced. And so the issue becomes generally, especially in severely affected lambs like this, the ewes have a really hard time giving birth. Sometimes the ewe may not even make it through that parturition process, and so the ewe and the lamb will perish. Those that do give birth to lambs, the lambs generally are so affected that they're not going to live very long. People that have issues with this will also see a number of ewes that are either open or they lamb late. And that goes back to that timing of infection. So if those ewes are infected in the first 25 days, often it will kill that pregnancy. She'll reabsorb it, it'll go away, she'll cycle back and breed again. But instead of lambing in January, like the other ewes that may have had affected lambs, it'll lamb maybe in February or March, something thereafter. Not all of them are affected the same, and you won't see an entire group of animals affected because this virus is pretty common and it's endemic to North America. They did some research a couple of decades ago and surveyed sheep operations here in Texas, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 40% of the animals were carrying antibodies for this virus, or they had developed an immunological response. So after they have the virus, the ewes may not even be all that ill. They may go off feed for a few days, but often you won't even know that it happened until you get to the birthing season. Fortunately, the ewes are going to develop an immunological response, and if they encounter the virus again later in life, they're not going to have any issues with it. You won't see this classical case, and often when people do see problems, it's in younger ewes because they haven't had as long to get exposed to that virus and be able to see it. The unfortunate part is there's not a whole lot of treatment once the problem has occurred. So a lamb is born like this, you have another 100 ewes to lamb in the next couple of weeks. There's likely others are going to be presented with it as well. There's really nothing you can do at that point in time. If you're trying to prevent this, that needs to take place several months in advance. So obviously, if we're breeding ewes later in the fall or in the winter for late winter or spring born or early summer born lambs, there's generally not going to be but there's generally not going to be any mosquitoes around, or if they are, they may have already inoculated the ewes and they develop an immunological response. So we don't see problems with this except early in the lambing year. And generally we see more problems with this in a wet year that had several dry years before it. So there were several dry years, there weren't mosquitoes, the flock had a lower level of protection against it. We get a lot of rain, we get a lot of mosquitoes, and we see problems. But I recognize that there's a lot of folks that that choose to lamb, December, January, early February, it does put them at risk to this. They may be raising show lambs, they may be timing the markets. And so I'm not saying that you don't lamb that time of year, but if you do, you might take some extra precautions. Spray the ewes with an insecticide, especially down on their belly and legs where they get bitten all of the time. Maybe an insecticide ear tag would be something that people would use, and definitely try to get those early pregnant ewes out of areas where there's a lot of standing water and there's higher rates of mosquitoes. So again, really wanted to make you aware of this virus. Maybe it helps you in your management strategy to prevent something like this from occurring at your ranch into the future. If you got any questions, let us know. Thanks. Have a great day.